And welcome back to Down by Contact Sunday Postgame Edition. This is Week 15. I'm Jeff Rich, joined by Chris Green as always, and we're here to take you through all of Sunday's action. But first, let's get some stale thoughts on the Thursday night football game in St. Louis between the Arizona Cardinals and the St. Louis Rams. I believe the Cardinals go to 11-3 with the victory. The Cardinals fall to 6-8 with the home defeat. 12-6 game, not the most exciting football game in the world. What do you got left over on this, Chris? Before we get to the Sunday action?
Well, for the first time in 3 weeks, St. Louis actually gave up some points to somebody, though it was minimal, 4 field goals, and Arizona lost another quarterback, so they were down to their third stringer, Ryan Lindley, and I don't think he threw a pass that wasn't behind the line of scrimmage, so they could be in big trouble for the next couple weeks.
They're in a lot of trouble. I'll tell you, Ryan Lindley, Logan Thomas is your depth at quarterback. Running game's banged up. They got a good offensive line for a change. They've got Bruce Arians to figure it out. There's probably nobody you'd rather have in your corner than Bruce Arians if you're struggling with personnel in the manner that they are. But they also held the Rams to 6 points, and we all know that the Cardinals are beaten and battered all across their defense. Of course, they lost Darrell Washington for the year. Tyrann Mathieu huge in that secondary, but I know a lot of people knock the Deion Buchanan pick from Washington State, but that's safety. He plays safety like a linebacker, and it made a difference on Thursday night.
Absolutely. I mean, the Cardinals are going to go as far as their defense is going to take them at this point because that offense is going to be lucky to score any points. Right now, they just have to keep their fingers crossed that Stanton can come back from that sprained knee for the first week of the playoffs.
And he is week to week, and they had 10 days to recover. There were some Kurt Warner rumors, but I think that was more playful than anything, considering the guy retired after the 2009 season. Yeah. I think that I saw on Twitter that he said he spent a lot of time thinking about it, but he also had to consider that this is the National Football League. These are the best players in the world, and he's 43, and he's throwing the football. He lives here in Scottsdale, and I've seen that he's helping out with his kids' team. But that's nowhere near the rigors of preparing week to week for NFL defenses. So probably a wise move on Kurt Warner's part. I don't think he has anything left to prove.
He wasn't mobile when he did play. Imagine him coming back now. He'd get killed.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that, and timing and everything else from not being in an NFL locker room for close to 5 years now, because he retired after the 2009 playoffs. So, all right, so that was Thursday. The Cardinals are in really good position for the postseason, considering the Super Bowl is in Glendale and considering what happened in Buffalo today. But we'll get to that in a minute. A lot of meaningful action today, but also a lot of minutia that we'll get to. So we'll ramp up the relevance as we go here. We'll start with probably the least significant game of the week, actually the second least significant game of the week. Giants at home against the Redskins. Giants 24, Washington 13. We all know that Washington's a dysfunctional bunch. Colt McCoy goes down, goes out with the neck injury. 4 of 7. He didn't really get off the ground. He ran the ball a couple times. Didn't really get off the ground. Probably the big feature in that game was Odell Beckham Jr. with the 12 catches, 143 yards, 3 touchdowns. At the end of the half, the Redskins take the lead 10-7 on or actually they were about to go up 17-7. Play was overturned. Redskins end up turning over the ball. A lot of tempers flared. Santana Moss, wearing the skull cap on the sideline, gets ejected for his words with the official. Anything else you got on this game as the Redskins fall to 3-11 in their completely dysfunctional season?
Will Jay Gruden survive this season? That's the only thing that's the only intrigue at this point for Washington.
Can we make Chudzinski into a verb, like he's going to get Chudzinski'd after one season of coaching?
I think it's highly likely at this point. Dan Snyder's never been one to shy away from making controversial moves and all that. And between him and Robert Griffin III, I think the coach is more likely to go, and he'll try to stick with his golden boy that he gave up 3 drafts worth of picks for.
All right. Then there's this game that's of such little importance that I didn't even write down the final score. I assume that it went final at Jets 17, Titans 11. Is that
16,
correct?
yeah, 16-11 Jets, and that looked more like a baseball game. It was 5-3 at one point, and 16-11. I mean, just an ugly game with two teams that are just trying to get out of the season at this point.
All right, so what you have the Titans fall to 2-12, Jets improve to 3-11.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's just Tennessee looking to get that new quarterback again next year.
What happens to Jake Locker? Does he stay with the Titans, or do you think that he tries to, catch on somewhere else? And I mean, he was a pretty high pay, he was a top 15 pick, wasn't he?
He was, I think he was a top 10 pick, actually. I think he was like number 8 or 9, believe it or not. But I just can't see him being there after this year. This is a new coach, new everything. So I think they're going to be moving on, whether that's with Mettenberger or if they try to draft somebody at the top of the draft.
All right, after those two games, believe it or not, every game played today had meaning on the postseason. Just because, well, I don't know if the Chiefs are in and out, but at 8-6, I imagine that they're still mathematically hanging on. They avenged their loss to the Raiders, 31-13. Derek Carr threw the ball 56 times for 222 yards. Highlights are DeAnthony Thomas has the 80-yard punt return. Niall Davis has the long pass and the short touchdown runs for 2 touchdowns on the day. And it wasn't as close as it seemed. It was 31-6 most of the way. James Jones scores a pretty meaningless touchdown with 34 seconds left.
Yeah, I mean, the Chiefs, while they're still in it, I don't think they're really in it at this point. Their record says yes, but at this point, they were just looking to get a little bit of dignity back after the Raiders got their first win of the season against them pretty handedly a couple weeks ago in that rainstorm.
All right. Now this is funny because these two teams have terrible records, but the Panthers improved to 5-8-1 against the Bucks by a final score of 19-17. Derek Anderson in relief of Cam Newton improves to 2-0. Highlight for the Buccaneers was Doug Martin ran 14 times for 96 yards. Still hasn't run for 100 yards this season, but this was his season best. Yeah, and it's funny when you consider that tie between Carolina and Cincinnati earlier in the season. It looks like it's going to be able to play to Cincinnati's advantage, whereas it's going to weigh down. It almost looks like it's going to weigh like an anchor on the Carolina Panthers, who might have a layup against Cleveland Browns next week. We'll see what happens there. But can Derek Anderson lead this team to a best case scenario 7-8-1? Season and a division championship, perhaps.
Anything's possible at this point. I mean, I'm kind of hoping that they'll go 6-9-1 and win the division that way, with everybody else finishing 6-10. I think that'd be great, just for the fact that it hasn't been done before. So, but
if that's the case, the tie would help them.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I think the tie is actually going to help them at this point. As long as they can win one of the next 2 games, I think it's going to help them.
All right, moving into the staying with the NFC South, the Falcons host the Pittsburgh Steelers. This game looked like Pittsburgh was going to run away with it early, despite the fact that they didn't score an offensive touchdown. They go up 13-0 on William Gay's 3rd interception and also his 3rd interception return for a touchdown. As Ben Roethlisberger and Matt Ryan both throw for over 300 yards. Antonio Brown and Harry Douglas in relief of Julio Jones, so to speak. They both go for better than 100 yards. This was a game that Pittsburgh just teased Atlanta, thinking that they were in the game, and every time Atlanta was within a touchdown, Pittsburgh would score again. So Pittsburgh 27, Atlanta 20. The Steelers are 9-5. Falcons are 5-9, and both have a good chance at winning their division.
Yeah, that's frightening to think of. But as we said, 6 wins may do it in the NFC South at this point. But as much as the Falcons looked like they were out of that game, I tweeted you the other night about the Green Bay Atlanta game when Green Bay was up. Was it 31-6 at halftime or something like that? And I said, see, I told you it was going to be a blowout, and Atlanta came back and made a run there at the end, so I just kept my mouth shut today and waited to see what happens.
Atlanta's one of the better bad teams.
Hmm.
I don't think that anybody from the NFC South is going to win a playoff game because you're going to have a pretty strong wild card team going in there.
Yeah.
However, uh, they just kind of find a way. Steven Jackson had a good game. That team really hinges on Julio Jones, but you could see the depth there with Douglas having the big day, and they slowed down Le'Veon Bell. He had the long run, catch and run, but as far as running the ball, I think that he was held under 60 yards
Which is
or two.
surprising
Because
because
he's a good player. I mean, isn't he one of the more promising young backs in the league?
he is, but the other thing is too is Atlanta has, I think, the worst run defense in the league. So I mean, Cleveland ran all over them a few weeks ago. I was totally shocked that Pittsburgh's run game was stymied by Atlanta's defense. So I think at the end of the day, that's going to be their Achilles' heels. If they do make the playoffs, Matt Ryan's going to have to outscore whoever they're playing against because their defense isn't going to stop anybody.
What's your overall take on Ryan? He came in with so much promise, struggled to win a playoff game. I think he finally won one 2 or 3 years ago. There's been a knock on Ryan that he's a solid regular season performer, plays well at home, but has problems winning the big game. Yeah, I don't know that I see that. Whether I see that or not. Top quarterback drafted 6 or 7 years ago now. Uh, I think that that they've built a good team around him. I think that losing Tony Gonzalez is a big knock on their offense, but Steven Jackson doesn't look like he's lost a step with age. And when you have Julio Jones on the field, that might have been a different game today.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Atlanta and Ryan in particular, he's gotten a bad knock, and like you said, I don't quite get it. I mean, you hear like Peyton Manning's been knocked until he won a Super Bowl, and even after that, they still crack on him saying, "Well, Eli's won more than you." So I don't think it's all on Matt Ryan. It always seems to be the defense that ends up letting them down, not necessarily the offense in those games.
Okay, again, Pittsburgh goes to 9-5, trying to keep pace with the Bengals, who are now 9-4-1 with Jeremy Hill's 30-0 win over the Cleveland Browns, avenging their Thursday night football loss in early November. Hill was, what was it, 25 times, 140 yards, 2 touchdowns. One late, and I want to ask you about that. The big story here was the debut, the starting debut of Johnny Manziel. Goes 10 of 18. I mean, he was down 20-0 before he even opened his eyes this morning.
Yeah, that game was ugly with a capital U. I mean, the Browns offense pretty much they had 38 plays on the offensive side of the ball. That means they went 3 and out almost every single time they touched the ball. They had 5 first downs, 3 of them were by penalty. That tells you how atrocious the offense was today. Manziel didn't have a good game. Nobody had a good game. The defense didn't stop anybody. In all honesty, I don't know that anybody even bothered to show up today. It was pretty embarrassing. I mean, if you looked at saw the stadium shots at the end of the game, there was nobody there. I'm sure Haslam wasn't happy because the Browns fans, yeah, they definitely weren't. I mean, the only time the Browns or anybody stopped Jeremy Hill today was when he tried to jump in the stands and that fan pushed him back.
It was funny because we were sitting at the bar joking about that today, and I was gonna, I said I'm gonna look on Twitter, and I guarantee you there's at least 15 jokes.
Oh yeah, yep.
And about how that fan was the best defender the Browns had today, yep. and to be honest, I Twitter didn't disappoint me at all. I mean, those
yep.
jokes were all over the place, and just speaking as a Browns fan, I'm a little bit proud of that. If there was any takeaway from today, was that we didn't let the visiting fans walk all over us.
Yeah.
If you recall that game against the Bills in 2013, Buffalo takes over the stadium, and as it emptied out at the end, it was a home game for the Bills. So, way to go, Cleveland, stepping up. I know that Johnny Manziel had a lot to do with the spirit of the stadium today, but. Last home game of the year, so see it family day at First Energy Stadium, because that and it's 7-7. They haven't been 7-7 in a long time. I mean, this was actually a really good season, but you look at the Browns. They lost Alex Mack. They lost Phil Taylor. They played a significant amount of games without Josh Gordon. A good chunk of games without Carlos Dansby. Tayshaun Gibson, K'Wan Williams, half a game today without Joe Hayden. So there's a lot of excuses, but not quite to the effect of 23-0. Last thing I want to ask you about this game before we move on: Cincinnati's in a position where they could take a knee with inside of a minute to go. I know the Browns had their timeouts, but they run Rex Burkhead, who doesn't touch the ball a lot, especially with the success of Bernard and Jeremy Hill. What did you think of Cincinnati kind of rubbing salt in the wound at the end there?
I think it's just them getting back at how the Browns played against them earlier this season. You know, they're just sending their own message back that you may have beat us then, but we're showing who's really the boss in town here or in the state.
All right. Keeping with the Browns' ineptitude, they're one of the two teams to lose to the Jacksonville Jaguars this year. The Giants being the other. Jacksonville played a pretty darn good game again in Baltimore today. They were up 12. They were up 12-10 in the second half, and they even had a chance to win the game. They had two chances to win the game at the end. Ravens go up 20-12. Jacksonville, the second to last drive when it was still 17-12 when they actually could have won the game with a touchdown. They get a pretty good opportunity to Cecil Shorts down the sidelines and just miss. But Baltimore hangs on for the 20-12 in an ugly. And both teams had less than 100 yards on the ground. A lot of field goals in this game, but Joe Flacco and the Ravens ultimately get it done. They go to 9-5.
Yep. I mean, Jacksonville they're a team that's working to build up. They're still not very good. They gave Baltimore a good game, but Baltimore seems to play to their competition a lot this year from what we've seen. And once again, they're still missing Nada on the defensive side, so that hurts them. And if Bortles wasn't a rookie quarterback, maybe Jacksonville had somebody else, an experienced quarterback in there, maybe they win that game. But at the end of the day, he showed he was a rookie quarterback, and I think that's why Baltimore pulled that one out.
Yeah, and it wasn't impressive, and I think that if you looked at the entire AFC North today, and you're doing power rankings, I think you go Cincinnati, Pittsburgh, Baltimore, and then a distant fourth, Cleveland, which has pretty much been the story of the last 16 years.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those top three teams just rotate every year. One of them wins a division, one of them's a wild card, and the other one's right there. So, and then the Browns are always the left behind. So, hopefully next year that'll be a different story. But at this point, the Browns' only hope is to get to 500, try and get to 500. I mean, if they win 9 games, excellent. I don't expect them to at this point, but I like to see them at least finish the season 500, and I think they have a chance against Carolina. I mean, Carolina is probably not going to have Cam Newton playing. While they still are playing for a playoff spot, they're still at this point 5-8-1, so they're definitely beatable.
All right. Now let's talk about a few division clinchers. We'll start with the game in Indianapolis. Colts go to 10-4 with the 17-10 victory over the Texans. The Texans lose Ryan Fitzpatrick for the season to injury. Tom Savage comes in and kind of played like Johnny Manziel. 10-19, 127. Had the interception. Arian Foster ran the ball pretty well, nearly picking up 100 yards. J.J. Watt, 2 sacks, 5 tackles on the day. In a day when his real competition for the MVP didn't, struggled in Buffalo. So, if you're looking at the individual awards, I think J.J. Watt kept pace at the very least. Andrew Luck, not extremely impressive, 18-34, 187 yards, 2 touchdowns. The Texans' only score came on a pick 6 of Luck. Kendrick Lewis goes 27 yards to the house. The Colts, for the second year in a row, win the AFC South. The Texans are hanging on by a thread at 7-7, but let's talk about the Colts. Andrew Luck, third year in the playoffs too. Mm-hmm. How much sustainability does this Colts team have when you're talking about New England, whoever wins the AFC North, Denver, and hard to speculate on the wild card teams, but where do you rank the Colts among the class of the AFC?
I think the Colts are definitely in the top tier of that discussion. What it's going to come down to, though, is it's kind of what I was talking about with Atlanta before, is they have to outscore teams in order to win. Their defense just isn't good enough to to stop other teams at this point. So, and if you get in, if Andrew Luck goes up against a solid defense, then you may hold them. Like today, 17 points for them is pretty low. I mean, that may even be their lowest total of the year, actually. So that's very low scoring for them. Most teams are going to be lucky to hold the Colts to 30 points, but the question is, can the Colts keep the other team under 30? So I think any game that the Colts are going to be in the playoffs is going to be a shootout.
All right, another division clincher, a potential division clincher, and it came to be in New England. Patriots 41, Dolphins 13. The tail of this game was the second half. Patriots outscored the Dolphins 27-0. But in the first half, it's 14-13 at the half because the Patriots kind of got way too conservative at their own 17 with inside of a minute left, and Ryan Tannehill finds Mike Wallace. Play had to be reviewed, but it stands for a touchdown. I know that aggravated the Patriots. Bill Belichick couldn't have been happy, but they come out in the second half, and it goes from 14-13 to 41-13. Big note on this game would be Steven Gostowski hits a field goal in the third quarter for his 1160th career point, passing Adam Vinatieri on the all-time scoring list. So I think that's a pretty prestigious record, even though kickers hold most of the the franchise scoring records, just because they get they get 1 point for every touchdown, and they get 3 points every time they kick a field goal. So, but that's still pretty impressive because Adam Vinatieri is a Hall of Famer.
Yeah, exactly, no doubt. And I mean, he's actually gotten much better with age. Even he was great with New England, but this year he's like a robot. I don't think he's missed all year, actually, as what they were saying last week.
Yeah, very, very impressive. Any other thoughts? Patriots go to 11-3, clinch the AFC East.
I mean, they're like clockwork every year. They're right there in the playoff discussion, and I mean they're battling it out for the Super Bowl. So it's just a matter of they're a little bit older team, so can they survive the rigors of the playoffs after a long season too? I mean, Brady's definitely been great, pretty much since he got called out early in the year after a bad game. Since then, he's been lights out all year. So I think they're the team to beat in the AFC right now, and until somebody knocks them off their perch, that's who I'd be going with.
Well, probably the top suitor to knock them off their perch at least this year, and it won't happen because, as we said, they clinched the division. But the Buffalo Bills, a couple weeks ago, they were virtually left for dead.
Mm-hmm.
They had to beat the Browns, and and they've been on a nice little run. They had the Packers coming in what everybody said would be a trap game for the Packers, coming off the short week, coming off the near collapse in the second half against the Falcons on Monday night, where they go 31-7 and they end up holding on for a 43-37 victory. Eddie Lacy runs the ball pretty well, but 15 carries, 97 yards. But you're going into today anyway, your runaway MVP candidate Aaron Rodgers, 17 of 42, 185 yards, 2 interceptions, no passing touchdowns. Jordy Nelson doesn't have a great game. Dropped one pass, and Rodgers didn't find him in another situation. He has 5 catches, 55 yards. As I said, no receiving touchdowns. And the Bills just found a way to make plays, and they did not play well on offense. They kicked a whole lot of field goals, and they end up winning that one 21-13. The Packers have one last chance, and Mario Williams gets the strip sack. I don't know if you caught that.
Yeah,
bizarre scenario.
It
really
was
strange rule. So take me through that play a little bit as you saw it, because I I understand that the rule is the rule, but I don't know that I necessarily agree with the rule being applied that way in that situation. I mean, obviously it was applied correctly, confirmed by Fox's officiating expert, but that ball got fumbled, and Eddie Lacy didn't make it out of the end zone anyway, but the play was already blown dead. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, Rodgers didn't even know where the ball went as soon as it got knocked out of his hands. He was just standing there, and I'm watching the ball in the end zone thinking, what are you doing? Why aren't you going after it? He's looking around, then all of a sudden Lacy goes to pick it up, and you see the officials waving their arms saying the play's dead. It's like, what's that all about? I mean, I didn't know that rule. I've never seen it called before. It's the strangest thing I've ever seen. It's like, yes, they got the safety either way, but why can't the guy at least try to get it out of the end zone? I mean, that's got to be one of the dumbest rules I've ever heard of.
Yeah, and look, Chris, I understand. You're trying to avoid the Dave Casper holy roller play where you're fumbling the ball to your advantage. But the ball goes backwards. Anybody should be able to pick it up because the
Yeah.
defense can advance the ball, and inside of 2 minutes, I just don't know about that. Because what happens if you're running a swing pass and you get the Canadian bounce?
Yep.
I mean, the ball is dead right there because on a lateral, that's not. I think that's taking the rules a little bit too far. And I think that
Yep.
the competition committee should look at a rule like that
Yeah.
and review it and probably get rid of the rule in that case. I don't know. It just obviously Rogers wasn't intentionally fumbling it, and then
Yeah.
when you make it subjective call like that,
Hmm.
maybe it's just too difficult. But in that situation, I don't really understand ruling the play dead there. I just don't get it at all. But the Packers were pretty much left for dead at that point anyway. I think that was a third down play, and
Hmm.
they would have been they needed 95 yards plus a 2-point conversion just to force overtime there.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, who knew? Aaron Rodgers is actually human. He's not a robotic quarterback, so he can even have a bad game too. It just goes to show that anybody can at any time in the NFL. But I mean, the Packers are still going to be in the playoffs. They're still going to be fighting for a Super Bowl. They had a bad week. Buffalo's defense is great. Not to take anything away from them. They're fighting to get into the playoffs. Their offense really isn't doing much of anything. It's all their defense at this point. So they got to break their way. Let's see if it helps them out to get in.
All right, let's cruise through these late games. We already mentioned Jets 16, Titans 11. In Detroit, the Lions looking to swoop the Vikings. Matt Stafford actually not a good game for anybody. I think Bell had 60 yards rushing for the Lions, but and Calvin Johnson held the 4 catches for 53 yards. Teddy Bridgewater, pretty decent game, 31 of 41, 315 yards, a touchdown and 2 interceptions. This game comes down to the wire. The Lions hit a field goal late to go up 16 to 14. And Minnesota decides to try a 68-yard field goal at the gun. I didn't see it, but Blair Walsh from 68, no good, not even close from what I understand. But tell me why Mike Zimmer's sending his kicker out there to try that rather than throwing the Hail Mary at the end.
Well, at that point, their offense wasn't doing much of anything anyway. So, and the commentators even said that Bridgewater can't even get the ball that far because he just doesn't have the arm strength. So they figured the kicker Walsh actually they showed him right before the kick that he made a 70-yarder in the pregame. I mean, there's no pass rush or anything, but hey, what the heck? Why not give it a try? I mean, he had missed 2 kicks. Well, he had missed one and had one blocked earlier in the game, so he was going for his little redemption there. But he was about 5 yards short and to the left either way. So
All right, let's move it on down to San Diego. Broncos 22, Chargers 10. Broncos go to 11-3, clinch the AFC West. Chargers fall to 8-6. They're still in it. Probably the biggest story of this game, Julius Thomas, another monster game, but Peyton Manning exits for a little bit in the second quarter. Brock Osweiler comes in, but Manning returns after the half. Had a thigh injury, was wincing a lot of the second half after he came back. This was just kind of a game that Denver had to have. I imagine that if they had a bigger lead because they were up 16-10 most of this game, but I imagine if they had a bigger lead that Manning would have let Osweiler finish the game off. But how permanent do you think this injury is, and do you expect Manning to be back on the field next week?
Well, they said that he was also ill today, I guess, so that was playing into it too. So he had 2 things going on. I think the original reason he went out was dehydration, is what I heard. He went back to get IVs or something. So I think he'll be fine for next week. But I mean, he's starting to get up there in years too. So you never know. A thigh injury that could keep causing him problems the rest of the season at his age. So anything could happen. I mean, they aren't relying on him as much lately. They've gone more and more to the running game. They've kind of changed their tactics. I know Phil Simms was saying on the broadcast that he thinks it's there whenever they want it, but I kind of got to wonder, are we starting to see the end for Peyton Manning?
Yeah, I'm starting to feel that way. You never know, but and props to Anderson and Thompson for pulling their weight running the ball. They're not big names, but they're keeping the defenses honest so that Manning can find the 2 Thomases and And Emmanuel Sanders keeps coming up with big first down catches. He's not their feature, but he's certainly a valuable cog in the whole Broncos scheme. So Broncos are going to play some home games in the playoffs. Nobody's got home field clinched just yet, but we'll see. Speaking of home field, the Seahawks were who arguably have the best home field advantage in all of football, hosting the 49ers, who are kind of falling apart. It was a close game early. Actually, it was a close game throughout. 7-3 at halftime. The Niners led on the road, but Seattle puts together some big plays, and it's not just beast mode anymore. It's not just Marshawn Lynch. I don't know about Christian Michael, but Turbin sure runs the ball a lot like Lynch does, and what Seattle does is they just play physical football, and they impose their will on you. And even though they were down 7-3 at half, they shut San Francisco out in the second half. Two questions: will Seattle lose another game? It's 2 regular season games and 3 or 4 postseason games, and it has the window closed on San Francisco.
I think the window is definitely closed in San Francisco at this point. They were officially eliminated with today's loss, and quite honestly, I just, with all the turmoil going on there, I kind of find it hard to believe that Harbaugh is going to be back next year. So I think we're in for see some changes there, and whether they move forward with Kaepernick or maybe they even look outside for another quarterback at this point. I mean, he hasn't had a very good year, and the offense as a whole just hasn't been putting up points. So maybe it's time for a change there too. I mean, it's funny to say 2 years ago he was the big thing, and even last year, but this year he's really been quiet, and I don't know if it's just a matter of what the offense is doing now, or if he's just, the defenses have all caught up to him. But there's definitely some change going on there. As far as your other question about Seattle, I think Seattle's definitely probably going to win out to get into the postseason. I still wonder that despite how good their defense is, can they still score enough points against a Green Bay in the postseason? So I think I don't expect them to get to the Super Bowl at this point, but I think it's very possible you see them in the championship game.
And important to mention, they're 10-4, so they're even their game behind the Cardinals, which they can even up with a win next week at Arizona. And you go back to week 1, they beat the Packers straight up, so they can avoid a trip to Lambeau. Playoff games, regular season games, it doesn't matter. Games at Central Link Field are different for the Seahawks than they are anywhere else. So if they can secure home field advantage, and they do hold that tiebreaker from the week 1 victory over Green Bay on that Thursday night kickoff, 2014 season kickoff. So two more teams, and we got to get out of here. So let's keep this brief. But Dallas and Philly are 9-4. So the winner of this game tonight will be 10-4. Philly really smacked them around in the Jerry Dome on Thanksgiving night. But this is a different game. This is in Philly. What do you quick thoughts on this game?
I think this may go Dallas's way. I'm not convinced Sanchez is the answer for Philadelphia at quarterback right now, and without Nick Foles in there, I think they've been very inconsistent on offense. I mean, last week was one of their worst offensive. I think was the worst offensive performance of the Chip Kelly era. So I think anything's possible, and Dallas is fighting. So I think there's a good chance Dallas goes in there and ends up splitting the series.
And Mark Sanchez, if he hasn't already started to, is going to turn into a pumpkin eventually. One thing that was brought up on the Down by Contact podcast number 2 with Tarek Adam was how much teams struggle after they play Seattle because they just play such physical football. So I think you take that into account, and maybe you like the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe you like the Dallas Cowboys in Sunday Night Football on the road, and that's going to set up for an interesting final 2 weeks of the season in the NFC East. So. That's all we've got this week. Like I said, we got to get out of here. He's Chris Green. Follow him on Twitter at CGRN. And what are the numbers?
731.
731. At CGRN 731. As for me, I'm at by Jeff Rich. This has been a presentation of the More Than a Fan Digital Network. For this podcast and all of our shows, you can get us on iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn, BlackBerry World, and Zune Marketplace. Again, everybody, have a great week. Enjoy the games. We'll see you right back here next week between the afternoon games and Sunday Night Football. Have a good night.